decide you're done with me and don't want to watch these anymore. I am M. Price, and this is M. Price Can Read, and we are coffeeed up with the top bird right here, Tweety Bird, that is, and our dark Oaxaca coffee blend. And we're here to read and to finish The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, the enchanting prelude to The Lord of the Rings. It is a crisp Wednesday morning. I'm off today, and it's the perfect day to finish this up. The last chapter is The Last Stage. Let us begin, or really, let us end. Something like that. It was on May the 1st that the two came back at last to the brink of the valley of Rivendell, where stood the last, or the first, homely house. Again it was evening. Their ponies were tired, especially the one that carried the baggage, and they all felt in need of rest. As they rode down the steep path, Bilbo heard the elves still singing in the trees, as if they had not stopped since he left. And as soon as the riders came down into the lower glades of the woods, they burst into a song of much the same kind as before. This is something like it. Yeah, sip of coffee, I think, before I sing. The dragon is withered, his bones are now crumbled, his armor is shriveled, his splendor is humbled. Those swords shall be rusted, and throne and crown perish, with strength that men trusted, in the wealth that they cherish. Here grass is still growing, and leaves are yet swinging, the white flower flowing, and elves are yet singing. Come, Charlie the Lally, come back to the valley. The stars are far brighter than gems without measure. The moon is far whiter than silver and treasure. The fire is more shining on hearth than the gloaming, than gold won by mining, so why go a-roaming? Oh, Trallalally, come back to the valley. Oh, where are you going so late in returning? The river is flowing, the stars are all burning. Oh, whither so late and so sad and so dreary? Here elf and elf maiden now welcome thee weary. With Trallalally, come back to the valley. Trallalally, fa-la-lally, fa-la. Then the elves of the valley came out and greeted them, and led them across the water to the house of Elrond. There a warm welcome was made them, and there were many eager ears that evening to hear the tale of their adventure. Gandalf it was who spoke, for Bilbo was fallen quiet and drowsy. Most of the tale he knew, for he had been in it, and had himself told much of it to the wizard on their homeward way, or in the house of Beorn. But every now and again he would open one eye and listen, when a part of the story, which he did not know yet, came in. It was in this way that he learned where Gandalf had been to, for he overheard the words of the wizard to Elrond. It appeared that Gandalf had been to a great council of the White Wizards, masters of lore and good magic, and that they had at last driven the necromancer from his dark hole in the south of Mirkwood. Ere long now, Gandalf was saying, the forest will grow somewhat more wholesome. The north will be freed from that horror for many long years, I hope. Yet I wish you were banished from this world. It would be well indeed, said Elrond, but I fear that will not come about in this age of the world, or for many after. When the tale of their journeying was told, there were other tales, and yet more tales, tales of long ago, and tales of new things, and tales of no time at all, till Bilbo's head fell forward on his chest, and he snored comfortably in a corner. He awoke to find himself in a white bed, and the moon shining through an open window. Below it many elves were singing loud and clear on the banks of the stream. Sing all ye joyful, now sing all together. The wind's in the treetop, the wind's in the heather. The stars are in blossom, the moon is in flower, and bright are the windows of night in their tower. Dance all ye joyful, now dance all together. Soft is the grass, and let foot be like feather. The river is silver, the shadows are fleeting. Merry is Maytime, and merry are meeting. Sing we now softly in dreams, let us weave him, wind him in slumber, and there let us leave him. The wanderer sleepeth now soft be his pillow, lullaby, lullaby, alder and willow. Sigh no more pine till the wind and the morn, fall moon, dark be the land. Hush, hush, oak, ash, and thorn, hushed be all water till dawn is at hand. Well, merry people, said Bilbo, looking out, what time by the moon is this? Your lullaby would wake a drunken goblin, yet I thank you. And your snores would waken a stone dragon, yet we thank you, they answered with laughter. It is a drawing towards dawn, and you have slept now, since the night's beginning. Tomorrow, perhaps, you will be cured of weariness. A little sleep does a great cure in the house of Elrond, said he, but I will take all the cure I can get. A second good night, fair friends. And with that he went back to bed, and slept till late morning. Weariness fell from him soon in that house, and he had many a merry jest and dance, early and late, with the elves of the valley. Yet even that place could not long delay him now, and he thought always of his own house, of his own home. After a week, therefore, he said farewell to Elrond, and giving him such small gifts as he would accept, he rode away with Gandalf. Even as they left the valley, with the sky darkened in the west before them, the wind and rain came up to meet them. Merry is May time, said Bilbo, as the rain beat into his face, but our back is to legends and we are coming home. I suppose this is the first taste of it. There is a long road yet, said Gandalf. But it is the last road, said Bilbo. They came to the river that marked the very edge of the borderland of the wild, and to the ford beneath the steep bank, which you may remember. The water was swollen both with the meltings of the snow and the approach of summer, and with the day-long rain. But they crossed with some difficulty, and pressed forward, as evening fell, on the last stage of their journey. This was much as it had been before, except that the company was smaller and more silent. Also this time there were no trolls. At each point on the road, Bilbo recalled the happenings in the words of a year ago. It seemed to him more like 10, so that, of course, he quickly noted the place where the pony had fallen in the river, and they turned aside for their nasty adventure with Tom and Bert and Bill. Not far from the road they found the gold of the trolls, which they had buried, still hidden and untouched. I have enough to last me my time, said Bilbo, when they had dug it up. You had better take this, Gandalf. I dare say you could find a use for it. Indeed I can, said the wizard, but share and share alike. You may find you have more needs than you expect. So they put the gold in bags and slung them on ponies, who were not at all pleased about it. After that their going was slower, for more of the time they walked. But the land was green, and there was much grass through which the Hobbit strolled along contentedly. He mopped his face with the red silk handkerchief. No, not a single one of his own had survived. He had borrowed this one from Elrond. For now June had brought summer, and the weather was bright and hot again. As all things came to an end, even this story, a day came at last when they were in sight of the country where Bilbo had been born and bred, where the shapes of the land and of the trees were as well known to him as his hands and toes. Coming to a rise, he could see his own hill in distance, and he stopped suddenly, and he said this. And you've probably heard this before. Roads go ever, ever on, over rock and under tree, by caves where never sun has shone, by streams that never find the sea, over snow by winter sown, and through the merry flowers of June, over grass, over stone, and under mountains in the moon. Roads go ever, ever on, under cloud and under star, yet feet that wandering have gone, turn at last to home afar. Eyes that fire and swords have seen, and horror in the halls of stone, look at last on meadows green, and trees and hills they long have known. very much an English countryside little hymn, just a little tune that you'd sing across the rolling hills, Very beautiful, very Tolkien, very English, very, very ancient, Something that exists in this world that could exist in ours. Another age, I guess. Gandalf looked at him. "My dear Bilbo," he said, "something is the matter with you. You are not the Hobbit that you were." And so they crossed the bridge and passed the mill by the river and came back to Bilbo's own door. "Bless me, what's going on?" he cried. There was a great commotion, and people of all sorts, respectable and unrespectable, were thick round the door, and many were going in and out, not even wiping their feet on the mat, and Bilbo noticed with annoyance. In this whole section I have highlighted and underlined very much because I think it is hilarious. And just so Tolkien has this way of kind of highlighting the pettiness of some problems. In contrast to like Bilbo's just been fighting giant spiders and trolls and a dragon, and it has survived this huge battle that resulted in the deaths of all these creatures. And here he gets back, and as you'll see, if he was surprised, they were more surprised still. He had arrived back in the middle of an auction. There was a large notice in black and red hung on the gate, stating that on June the 22nd, Messrs. Grubb, and Burroughses would sell by auction the effects of the late Bilbo Baggins, Esquire of Bag End, Underhill, Hobbiton. Sale to commence at 10 o'clock sharp. It was now nearly lunchtime, and most of the things had already been sold, for various prices, from next to nothing to old songs, as is not unusual at auctions. Bilbo's cousins, the Sackville Bagginses, were, in fact, busy measuring his rooms to see if their own furniture would fit. In short, Bilbo was presumed dead, and not everybody that said so was sorry to find the presumption wrong. The return of Mr. Bilbo Baggins created quite a disturbance, both under the hill and over the hill, and across the water. It was a great deal more than a 9 days' wonder. The legal bother, indeed, lasted for years. It was quite a long time before Bilbo was in fact admitted to be alive again. The people who got specially good bargains at the sale took a deal of convincing, and in the end, to save time, Bilbo had to buy back quite a lot of his own furniture. Many of his silver spoons mysteriously disappeared and were never accounted for. Personally, he suspected the Sackville Bagginses. On their side, they never admitted that the returned Baggins was genuine, and they were not at all friendly terms with Bilbo ever after. They really had wanted to live in this nice hobbit hole so very much. Indeed, Bilbo found he had lost more than spoons. He had lost his reputation. It is true that forever after, he remained an elf friend, and had the honor of dwarves, wizards, and all such folk as ever passed that way. But he was no longer quite respectable. He was, in fact, held by all the hobbits of the neighborhood to be queer, even by his nephews and nieces on the Duck side. But even they were not encouraged in their friendship. Except by his nephews and nieces on the Duck side. But even they were not encouraged in their friendship by their elders. His nieces and nephews, by the way, that's Frodo. He's coming down the pipeline. I am sorry to say he did not mind. I have this highlighted as well. And it's interesting because, is that the narrator saying, oh, he wishes that Bilbo would have kept in touch with his hobbits, but at the same time he's like, yeah, Bilbo's just doing whatever he wants to do. And you know what? Screw anybody who tells you how to live your life, because Bilbo certainly lives his how he wants to. Anyway, I am sorry to say he did not mind. He was quite content, and the sound of the kettle on his hearth was ever after more musical than it had been even in the quiet days before the unexpected party. His sword he hung over the mantelpiece. His coat of mail was arranged on a stand in the hall until he lent it to a museum. His gold and silver was largely spent in presents, both useful and extravagant, which to a certain extent accounts for the affection of his nephews and nieces. His magic ring he kept a secret, for he chiefly used it when unpleasant callers came. Another highlighted bit. He took to writing poetry and visiting the elves, and though many shook their heads and touched their foreheads and said, "Poor old Baggins," and though few believed any of his tales, he remained very happy to the end of his days, and those were extraordinarily long. That's how Bilbo always wanted to end his story, and he remained very happy to the end of his days, as those familiar with Tolkien's writings will know. One autumn evening some years afterwards, Bilbo was sitting in his study, writing his memoirs. He thought of calling them There and Back Again, A Hobbit's Holiday. Which is this book, by the way. Very meta, just as much as Lord of the Rings is a book, called the Red Book of Westmarch, that Frodo and kind of Sam work on. When there was a ring at the door, it was Gandalf and a dwarf, and the dwarf was actually Balin. Remember, shout out Balin. Balin's the best dwarf. Come in, said Bilbo, and soon they were settled in chairs by the fire. If Balin noticed that Mr. Baggins's waistcoat was more extensive, he had had real gold buttons. Bilbo also noticed that Balin's beard was several inches longer, and his jeweled belt was of great magnificence. Apparently your beard length is directly proportioned to your wealth and success. Not unlike the ultra-wealthy, light-bending man from Disco Elysium, which just comes to mind. Shout out Disco Elysium, the best game ever made. The greatest of all time. They fell to talking of their times together, of course, and Bilbo asked how things were going in the lands of the mountain. It seemed they were going very well. Bard had rebuilt the town and dale, and men had gathered to him from the lake and from south and west, and all the valley had become tilled again and rich, and the desolation was now filled with birds and blossoms in spring, and fruit and feasting in autumn. And Laketown was refounded and was more prosperous than ever, and much wealth went up and down the running river, and there was a friendship in those parts between elves and dwarves and men. Got coffee taking one out of me. The old master had come to a bad end. Bard had given him much gold for the help of the lake people, but, being of the kind that easily catches such diseases, he fell under the dragon sickness, and took most of the gold and fled with it, and died of starvation in the waste, deserted by his companions. See what end lust and greed will get you. The new master is of a wiser kind, said Balin, and very popular, of course. He gets most of the credit for their present prosperity. They are making songs which say that in his day the river runs with gold. Then the prosophies of the old songs have turned out to be true, of course, after a fashion, said Bilbo. Of course, said Gandalf, and why should they not prove true? Surely you don't disbelieve the prophecies because you had a hand in bringing them about yourself. You don't really suppose, do you, that all your adventures and escapes were managed by mere luck, just for your sole benefit? You are a very fine person, Mr. Baggins, and I am very fond of you, but you are quite a little fellow. But you are only quite a little fellow in a wide world affair, after all. Thank goodness, said Bilbo, laughing, and handed him the tobacco jar. Oh, that was it. Oh, I should probably read that again. I was like, I think there's a little more after it. No, that's it. Let me read that again. The new master is of a wiser kind, said Balin, and very mother. This this guy outside always revving his engine, his crappy car. Every time he takes off, it's just loud as hell, thwarting my second attempt at reading and finishing this story. These final chapters are all pretty short, to be honest. Like, honestly, after you fight the spiders, which is like a 30-page chapter, each chapter after that, besides Smaug's chapter, is like 10 pages. You know, very short. The new master is of a wiser kind, said Balin, and very popular, of course, for he gets most of the credit for the present prosperity. They are making songs which they say that in his day the rivers run red, run with gold. I still can't read, can I? Then the prophecies of the old songs have turned out to be true after a fashion, said Bilbo. Of course, said Gandalf, and why should not they prove true? Surely you don't disbelieve the prophecies because you had a hand in bringing them about yourself. You don't really suppose, do you, that all your adventures and escapes were managed by mere luck, just for your sole benefit? You are a very fine person, Mr. Baggins, and I am very fond of you, but you are only quite a little fellow in a wide world after all. Thank goodness, said Bilbo, laughing, and handed him the tobacco jar. And that's it. How do you feel? You feel good? I feel good. And it goes to show a few things through that last little speech. The idea of this sort of fatalism that so many things are meant to be, and that Gandalf, of course, being this angelic being, kind of has an insider's ear to what is going to happen. Elrond does too. A lot of the really older creatures, wiser creatures of Middle-earth do, like Elrond and Galadriel, who's in more of the Lord of the Rings. Elrond, who has a bigger part, of course, in Lord of the Rings. Gandalf. These people have a sort of ear to the ground in terms of history and prophecy. Gandalf knows that there are things that are going to happen, and that it's not necessarily like set in stone, but just sort of needs a little shove to get things going. Like, especially in terms of Bilbo, he knew that hobbits are like low-key the most powerful and most amazing creatures in all of Middle-earth, and that they just need like a little motivation, basically. And that Bilbo did like his life of, of food and drinking and smoking and just having a good time, and the simple, having the simple pleasures of life. And then he just needed a little prod out the door to go on this fantastic adventure, and it was all actuality. Bilbo, who saved the dwarves so many times, was so vital in so many instances, helped the diplomacy at the end, kind of weirdly, and most importantly of all, it is kind of overshadowed by the story as a whole. He found the One Ring and recovered it. And not only did he find it, but his first act while wearing it was an act of kindness. He spared Gollum's life, and he kept it, and continues to keep it up until Lord of the Rings. But he doesn't keep it, in the sense that he's using it for evil. And it's a sort of wholesomeness that you'll come to find kind of cripples the ring's power in Lord of the Rings, and the reason why it doesn't totally overtake Frodo instantly and become this horror. I mean, it still is corrupting, but the reason why ultimately, they're able to go on their journey is because the ring was slightly weakened by Bilbo's just general joy and ability to distance himself from it. There's obviously still a lot of struggles both with Bilbo and with Frodo in regards to the ring. But Gandalf will even mention later on, it was the fact that Bilbo was such a nice, down-to-earth dude that really helped out big time in this situation. And then, of course, you have Bilbo's last line, where Gandalf's like, look at you, Bilbo, you're just a small part in this whole world. And Bilbo's like, yeah, thank God for that, because he liked playing his part, and he certainly enjoyed his adventure, but he'd really rather be at home drinking and smoking and gardening and looking at the sunlight and, just enjoying the nice breeze and the water and everything that's beautiful with the world. And I think that's such a core message that people all throughout time, but especially this day and age, could really gain from. You don't always have to be, on your phone or looking at the latest political nonsense or, just diving down what, greedy corporations are just trying to get you to dive down so they can get your money, down the road. And to just realize, I should just cook a meal, smoke my pipe, sit under a tree and read and just enjoy life is so important. And yeah, you should play your vital role in life, whatever that may be, whether you're a parent, whether you're, a vital person at your job, whether you're an independent artist or whatever you're working on. But realize too that the little things in life are so much more important than that. And at the end of it all, when you're, sitting on your porch, relaxing, enjoying your life, like the little nonsensities, insanities of yesteryear, of decades ago, don't make a lick of difference. And what really matters is just, just the beauty of the world. But the beauty of the world, of course, doesn't come for free, as is shown many times. Yes, in The Hobbit, it will be shown a lot more in Lord of the Rings, and that, there is a price to pay for having these things, just like Tolkien's experiences in World War I, like, yeah, they saved the world, but at a great personal cost to them, to themselves, to people who fought and who had to sacrifice for these things. Which then, there's that amazing disconnect where, like, Bilbo went on this journey, he had these adventures, and he arguably made the world a better place because his adventures resulted in Smaug finally being defeated, and this army of goblins being destroyed, in the lake men building back their towns, and the elves and the dwarves and the men kind of having a better relationship, and the eagles getting more involved with the sort of politics of the world. Things are better, and of course the ring was found, which will lead to the ring being destroyed, and this huge darkness being banished from the realm. But there's a sort of disconnect when you get home and you realize that the people at home don't care about any of that. I mean, his cousins were like trying to buy his home out from under him, and people were selling all of his stuff. People like, nah, Bilbo, screw that guy, get rid of him. And you know what? A similar thing happens in Lord of the Rings when they finally get back home, and everything has been turned upside down. And it's just this idea that, like, Bilbo even kind of acknowledges, they're all gonna think I'm weird and crazy forever, but I don't care. I know that I did the right thing. I know that I made the world better, and I'm gonna be content with my life. And my nieces and nephews who kind of have an ear to the ground in terms of what did happen, and who believe me, and who still like me, and love me for who I am, I'll focus on them, and I'll focus what's in my realm of control, and just keep on living and not care that, most of Hobbiton thinks I'm this crazy old man who went on this wild adventure, and now I have this sword and magical armor coat of Mithril, and all this mysterious money, and I always have business with that crazy wizard Gandalf. But just keep on living your life and realize that maybe your new status as a pariah is a necessary sacrifice to have done all those amazing things. And maybe it's our pariahs in society who are really the heroes. I don't know, something like that. Regardless, as a new day is dawning, I hope you enjoyed this series. I certainly did. I'm gonna have another break after this, finishing up videos to the end of the year, and then I'm gonna go and start writing my own fantasy story, and I'll be giving previews of that as they develop. it should be fun. Just trying to gather a lot of support, on here, just to gain an audience that way. I could be big kid published someday, you know what I mean? I try to gather some other people who like reading, who like, bigger thoughts. Kind of like I would discuss a lot of different ideas in my past eating videos and ASMR videos, and just try to gather a group of like-minded people who want to read, want to listen, want to think, and that way, when the time comes, I can say, hey, potential, whether it's like a studio or a publisher or whatever it happens to be, hey, I have this group of like-minded people who all want to get in on this too, who all want to be a part of this. So let's make it happen. Let's create some good stuff, and will you calm down, garbage truck? I appreciate your garbage. I appreciate your garbageness and your garbage delivery, but you're a little loud right now for my video. But we can't edit it out either. We have to keep it in. We have to keep everything in. But let's become pariahs ourselves, I guess, and be the outsider, and have a little group of the core people who we really appreciate and who we really trust and love, and let's have fun. Anyway, I have been Bryce, and I still am Bryce, I guess, but this has been our read-through of The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. I would like to do a read-through of Lord of the Rings later on, when I'm more in the process of, or more closer to the end of my first fantasy book in my series. That way I can help snowball support for that. Try to get that ball rolling. Regardless, by now you really should know that Dog City never sleeps. You should also know that I hope that you sleep.